Australia's median house price just crossed $1 million. The RBA just hiked rates again. And APRA just changed the rules on how much banks will lend you. So I want to ask you one simple question. On your salary right now, in 2026, what can you actually afford? Because last week my mate Jake, a nurse, 85 grand a year, 3 years of saving, asked me that exact question. And his answer shocked him. By the end of this video, it might shock you too. Here's what nobody in the finance industry wants to say out loud. Most Australians are going to spend their entire working life paying off a house that was too expensive for them. Not because they're bad with money, because nobody ever showed them the right calculation. And that's exactly what we're fixing today. By the end of this video, you're going to know 3 things. Exactly how much house your salary can buy right now, the hidden costs that blow most budgets apart before settlement day, and the one government scheme that could save you $30,000 that your bank will never tell you about. Stay till the end, because that last one changes everything. But before we get into the numbers, I need to tell you about Jake. Because his story is probably your story too. 85 grand a year, 40 grand saved, 3 years of sacrifice, skipping holidays, saying no to dinners out, doing absolutely everything right. And he sat across from me and asked, "Mate, am I even close?" When I ran his numbers, his borrowing capacity came out at around $278,000. With his 40 grand deposit, he could buy a property around $318,000. He went quiet for a second. Then he said, "So I can actually do this?" And I said, "Mate, yes. It's not your dream home. It won't be in the suburb you grew up in. But it's your property. It's your foot in the door. It's equity that grows while you sleep." 6 months later, Jake bought a 2-bedroom unit in Toowoomba. Not Sydney, not Brisbane CBD, but his. And that asset has already gone up in value. The point is this. The numbers don't have to be perfect. You just have to start. Now let me show you where you stand. First, before we get to your number, you need to understand how banks actually think. Because banks don't care about your dreams, your Pinterest board, or that 3-bedroom house you've been eyeing in Brisbane. They care about one thing: serviceability. That's just a fancy word for can you actually pay this loan back? Here's how it works right now in Australia. The average variable mortgage rate is sitting around 6.6%. But APRA, the Australian Prudential Regulation Authority, basically the banking watchdog, forces every lender to stress test you at your rate plus a 3% buffer. So they're not asking can you afford repayments at 6.6%? They're asking can you afford repayments at 9.6%? Why? Because life happens. Rates go up. Jobs change. They want to know you won't fall apart if things get harder. And here's the brand new rule that came in February 2026. Banks can now only approve up to 20% of their new loans to borrowers with a debt-to-income ratio of 6 or higher. What that means in plain English: if your total loan is more than 6 times your gross income, most banks won't touch it. Now I need to stop you here, because what I'm about to show you is what most mortgage brokers will never put in writing. Your real numbers, salary by salary. I'm going to use what I call the buffet bracket method, matching real Australian salary brackets to real buying power based on the latest ABS data. Median full-time salary is around 74 grand, average around 104 grand. Let's work our way through every bracket, and I want you to find yours. Single income, $75,000 a year. I want you to picture someone on this salary. Maybe it's you. Maybe it's your mate. Maybe it's the nurse at your local hospital working double shifts. That person, saving hard, doing everything right, can borrow roughly $246,000. With a 20% deposit, they're buying around $307,000. Not Sydney, not Melbourne, but regional areas, Darwin, Hobart, real properties, real equity. And getting in matters more than getting in perfectly. Single income, $100,000 a year. Think the trod eye, the teacher, the junior accountant who's been grinding for 5 years. Borrowing power around $338,000. With a 20% deposit, property around $422,000. Units in Adelaide, Brisbane, Perth. Still not inner city Sydney. But real options. Real equity. Real wealth building. Single income, $125,000 a year. Borrowing power reaches around $429,000. With deposit, property worth roughly $536,000. Units in major cities, houses in regional centers. You're properly in the game now. Now here's where most couples make a massive mistake, and I see it every single week. They look at their combined income and go straight to the bank without doing this calculation first. Dual income, $150,000 combined. Borrowing power around $620,000. With deposit, property up to $775,000. Capital city units become realistic. Houses in Adelaide, Hobart, Darwin, within reach. Dual income, $200,000 combined. Borrowing power jumps to approximately $827,000. With deposit, property around $1,033,000. This is the threshold where you're competing for houses in Brisbane and Perth at their current medians. Dual income, $250,000 combined. Borrowing power around $1,035,000. With deposit, property up to $1,293,000. And only at this income level does a median Sydney house even become a possibility. Because Sydney's median right now is sitting at about $1.6 million. To put that in perspective, you need to be in the top 10% of Australian household incomes just to afford the middle of the Sydney market. Let that sink in for a second. Quick pause. If this is already making sense, and you want more videos breaking down exactly how to build wealth through Australian property, hit that subscribe button right now and turn on notifications. I put out new content every week, and I don't want you to miss what's coming next. All right, back to it. Now here's the mistake that is quietly destroying people's financial futures, and most Australians make it without even realizing. Most people look at their borrowing capacity and think, okay, that's my budget. Let's spend it all. That is the fastest way to end up in mortgage stress. What the bank will lend you and what you can comfortably afford are two completely different numbers. The 30% rule exists for a reason. Your total housing costs, mortgage repayments, rates, insurance, maintenance should stay under 30% of your gross income. If you're spending 40 or 50% of your income on housing, you're in stress territory. You're one job loss, one broken hot water system, one rate hike away from serious trouble. So instead of asking how much can I borrow, ask yourself these three questions. 1. What's my monthly take-home pay after tax? 2. What does 28% of that number look like? That's your ceiling for mortgage repayment. 3. After that repayment, can I still save at least 10% of my income? If the answer to question 3 is no, the property is too expensive. Full stop. No matter what the bank approved. Now I need to stop you here, because what I'm about to tell you is what most people find out only after they've signed the contract. The hidden costs that blow budgets apart. Stamp duty, depending on your state and purchase price. This alone can cost you $20,000 to $40,000. First home buyers get concessions though. New South Wales, no stamp duty on homes up to $800,000. Victoria, full exemption up to $600,000. Concessions to $750,000. Queensland, no stamp duty up to $700,000 for first home buyers. If you're not a first home buyer, stamp duty is a massive upfront cost you cannot ignore. Lender's mortgage insurance. If your deposit is under 20%, you'll likely pay LMI. That can add $10,000 to $30,000 onto your loan. Yes, onto your loan. You're borrowing money to pay insurance that protects the bank, not you. Brutal. But that's how it works. Then there's the stuff that adds up faster than you'd think. Conveyancing fees, building inspections, pest reports, moving costs. Budget at least $5,000 to $8,000 for these on top of everything else. Factor all of this in before you fall in love with a property. Now I know what some of you are thinking right now. You're thinking, maybe I should just wait. Wait for rates to drop. Wait for prices to fall. I hear this every single week. And every single week, I show people the same data. Over the last 5 years, Brisbane house prices surged over 85%. Perth up more than 24% in the last year alone. Adelaide up nearly 79%. Even Melbourne, the weakest major market, still up around 8.5% over 5 years. The people who sat on the sidelines in 2021 waiting for a crash didn't save money. They lost purchasing power every single year they waited. The gap between their salary and the median house price got wider and wider. Timing the property market is just as dangerous as timing the stock market. You don't need the perfect moment. You need the right numbers and a plan you can stick to for 10 years. And here's something most people don't know. Since October 2025, the First Home Guarantee Scheme has been expanded with unlimited places and no income caps. If you've saved just a 5% deposit, you can now apply as an eligible first home buyer, and the government guarantees up to 15% of your loan, meaning no LMI. That is a massive head start that didn't exist a few years ago. And here's one last thing I want you to sit with. The bank approves you for $1.6 million. But if you bought a median price Sydney property today and took out a 30-year mortgage, by the time that loan is done, you've actually paid close to $2.8 million. That's the number they never show you on the brochure. Not the price tag, the total cost, which is exactly why getting the right property at the right price for your income matters more than anything else. All right, before you go, I want you to pause this video right now and do this. Open your calculator. Step 1. Take your gross annual income and divide by 12. That's your monthly gross. Step 2. Multiply that number by 0.28. That is the maximum monthly mortgage repayment worth taking on. Step 3. Google a mortgage repayment calculator, plug in that monthly repayment, use a rate of 6.6% over 30 years, and it will reverse engineer your real property budget. The number you get, that is your number. Not what the bank offers, not what your friend paid. Yours. Buy within that number, and you'll sleep soundly at night. Stretch to the absolute maximum the bank offers, and you'll spend the next decade stressed, house rich and cash poor. The house is supposed to be the foundation of your wealth, not the thing that traps you. On Aussie Finance with Buffet, we don't do fluff, and we don't do generic advice. We do the real numbers that actually move the needle for everyday Australians. If this video gave you clarity today, send it to one person who needs to see it before they walk into a bank. Not a story post, a direct message. They'll thank you for it. And if you want the full First Home Guarantee Scheme breakdown, every step, every eligibility requirement, comment FHGS below right now, and I'll make that my next video. Hit subscribe, turn on the bell, and I'll see you next week.